Hello, and we are back with the Mentor Minutes podcast. And once again, I'm Jared, and with me today is...
Hey, I'm Steven.
Steven. And of course, with our podcast special today, we have a special guest. We're going to be doing an interview with our good buddy, Curt Covert from Smirk and Dagger Games. How are you doing, Curt?
Doing great. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for kind of taking some time out of your busy schedule to talk with us lowly gamers who, just like to play games and talk about them on the internet.
I am that also.
Yeah. So, we actually met back in March when Tantrum Con in Charlotte happened. So if you were following us on Instagram, you might have seen some of the posts from the convention. And one of those was, of course, playing Shobu and learning Behext over at the Smirk and Dagger booth set up at Tantrum Con. And that's how we met and got introduced to Mr. Covert. Yeah, so it's been a lot of fun trying out some of these new games that you guys have come out with. What are you most excited about that Smirk and Dagger has coming out?
Coming in the future.
Yeah.
Let's see. Well, so I think while you were there, we also had a look at the Spill, maybe briefly, but that was our Kickstarter from last August, I want to say. Yeah. It is just finally getting on a boat. We'd had a little bit of delays with a closing down of the factory for a little bit. They forgot to print a sticker sheet, so that finally got put in the box.
Oh no.
Yep. And so everything looks good, and it looks like our sailing date is going to be the 10th. So I'm thinking end of June, and I couldn't be more excited to have that in our hot little hands, because it's such a great co-op game. If people don't know about it, the Spill is
it's like an oil cleanup game.
It is, yeah. So it's got this it's got this 4-way dice tower that represents an oil rig in trouble. And so when you drop these 60 dice slowly over the course of the game down the chute.
Did you say 60 dice?
There are 60 dice in the game, yes.
Whoa.
That is a big oil spill.
Yeah. And so, it starts with 8 dice, and then every turn, it's 3 more dice. And then, of course, as you start having spill outs, that increases. Then it's 4 and 5 dice per turn. But what you're trying to do is sail the perimeter, contain the oil, remove what oil you can, and save the sea life. And it's a tense game. It'll give you kind of like a pandemic feel, but it's a little bit more intuitive and approachable than even like a pandemic. So I think it's going to attract a broader audience. And we even ended up putting together a lesson plan for teachers. So it's a Common Core lesson plan. It starts with like how do oil and water react, and then it uses the game to kind of show what happens during an oil spill. So it's educational. Yeah.
Or can be.
It can be. Yeah. Well, I mean,
like Genius Games, they focus on like those just straight educational, but gameplay, those are still solid games. Cytosis, Cellulose.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I'm always about games that can have like education to them while also still being a solid, fun game that you want to play. And I'll tell you, when I started, I've been doing like the news segments on my channel, like every other Friday, try to cover like news announcements. And when I saw the Spill last summer, I was like, this looks really good. I was like, I like the look of it. It's a bright, colorful looking game. It's got this really unique kind of tower in the center of the board that, is part of this like dropping of, the oil spills. And I was like, it just thematically sucks you in. Like you just say like, wow, that makes a lot of sense. And it's kind of like, my first thought was like a reverse tower defense.
That's exactly what it is. You're completely correct in that. Yeah, because the dice keep on spilling out, and you're trying to hold everything back and remove it. So yeah,
because like there's other like Castle Panic, Star Trek Panic, Zombie Panic, but those are one way to work, right? One different type of thing, and you're building up walls. But this one, like you said, you're containing it, and it makes sense because it's an oil spill, and you're like, I understand what we're doing here.
You know what you're doing there.
It's an immediately apparent type of situation.
I think that's exactly the thing that makes it so intuitive. Like you see the danger developing physically on the board. It just, what's great is when they drop down the chute, they spill out into one of 4 different quadrants, just by natural, that's how they're going to fall.
Sure.
And then based on the number that gets rolled in that quadrant, it goes to one of 6 sectors. So you roll a 6, it goes to the 6th sector. So you just naturally know where to put everything, and it just randomly starts spreading.
And the numbers then, would that be like the closeness to the spill kind of thing?
Well, it always starts in the inner ring, and then it works its way out. So if you roll a 2nd 6 and a 3rd 6, and of course,
so like doubles of things and stuff.
Yeah, and that's where it starts impacting the animals. So the inner ring, there are no animals, but 2nd and 3rd ring, you're probably going to hit some sea life. And if an oil dye lands in that spot, it contaminates them. So now they're harder to rescue. And if you can't get to them in time, they go to sick bay. And that's, of course, one of the losing conditions. This is a game where you win by not losing every single turn. So it's a pretty tense game.
How many animals were harmed in the making?
They're all cardboard and everything's okay.
All right.
I would still feel bad knowing that like during the game that we let any like 10, 15 sea animals die, you know.
They go to sick bay.
Sick bay. So once the game's over, it's assumed they get taken care of.
Of course. Yeah.
That's good to hear. That's good.
I'm sure everyone at EPA and you know, PETA and everyone else is happy with that.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I've definitely, my son is he's a grown adult, and he played with me as we were testing it out. The first time he played, you know, obviously it's a cooperative game. It's going to be hard to win, right? So you usually lose your first game, and you know, he loses the game, and for like a good 15 minutes, he hated the world and humans in it. Like, how could, you know, we don't take care of the environment? I'm like,
wow. Makes you an activist.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Well, mission accomplished, it sounds like, right?
I mean, you should market this to environmental clubs and AP environmental classes around the high schools around the country.
Yeah. And well, so here's what's interesting too. While we are having the Kickstarter, some of our backers are they're people who work in the industry.
Yeah.
So a guy,
the environment industry or the oil industry?
No, well, the environment industry. and quite honestly, because you remember the Gulf oil spill, you know, that was the worst disaster in a very long time. So the reaction of the world to that was to try to be ready for the next time. So several organizations were formed, and it was done with the help and cooperation and funding of all the oil companies, as well as you know, people who are just, you know, more earth conscious and that kind of thing. So so they contacted me and they said, hey, listen, love the theme, love to see the fact that like it actually does a great job of representing the kind of things that happen. And obviously it's abstracted, but this is a pretty tight interpretation. Yeah.
Do you think that they have a use for them, or have they indicated how they could apply that?
Yeah. So actually, I know one of the organizations has asked me to send some copies, and they're going to use it for their training program. You know, kind of like when they first come in, and they're just kind of like, it's kind of like break the ice, that kind of thing. They're going to like potentially work that into their greeting of new employees.
It sounds like a great way to start too.
Yeah, I think so.
That's a great onboarding start to a company.
Yeah, and what's great is, you know, he told me that because of the whole disaster, they now have a 747 specially outfitted with a cap, the kind of which that would have been great to have back in that time frame, that they can now fly anywhere in the world on a moment's notice, so that they can cap, you know, wells that have that same problem.
Wow,
that's incredible.
That's a great progress from, you know, where we started having nothing.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. So doing the good work of environmentalism and also making some great games. Like I said, I saw it and I was like, this is a really cool, interesting game. I can't wait to try it, hopefully. And
So how many of your games have you done on Kickstarter now?
Oh, well, so Kickstarter is a pretty new animal for me. I started doing it basically the month before COVID hit. I was ramping up to it. And largely, yeah, I suppose I could have done it a long time ago and maybe should have. But for the longest time, well, first, I actually believed in the original inspiration for Kickstarter, being able to help people who could not otherwise bring a game to market or a project to market.
Sure.
So it felt a little disingenuous. I could certainly fund my own games, and I wasn't going to jump in at that time for that reason. Then as some established companies started doing it, I was like, well, gee, maybe I should. But man, at that time, retailers despised Kickstarter. They felt like you were taking, money right out of their pockets, and for good reason. There are a lot of people who now kind of almost exclusively buy games through Kickstarter.
Right.
Well, that's where the market is for the most part. There's just a large portion of board gamers who are on Kickstarter, who back Kickstarter games.
Yep.
Not exclusively, but I mean, certainly that's a large, percentage of what they maybe weren't buying before.
Yeah,
correct. And then I think there is a real sea change. At some point, it became clear that with so many games on the market, so much competition, it used to be you could put everything that came out in a year in a store. And with 5,000 games a year, there's no way that any store can actually do that. So now, all of a sudden, not only is it providing great marketing for publishers who are getting their word out stronger than ever as new games are, approaching the market, but on top of that, it was kind of a proof point for retailers like, oh, this is going to be a hot game. I better stock it. And of course, then people were smarter about, well, let's have retail levels in there. Let's give them the same things so that they can make those sales too. For people who may have missed it. And I think all of those things kind of came together. And at some point I was like, I'm crazy to not do it at this point. So I've now done 3 or 4 Kickstarters at this point. It started with Cinder, which was my first time out. I started as a kind of a small project. I only did it in the US. And I made most of my mistakes, and I had actually brought in a team that helped me through those first steps, because you don't know what you don't know, and you don't want to fall into the pit holes.
You certainly don't want to lose money on it.
Exactly. So I worked with Johnny Soper and Off Duty Ninja, and they actually helped me see all the pitfalls beforehand. Yeah.
Now, I know Jamie Stegmaier had written the book, so to speak, on how to be successful on Kickstarter. Were you able to check out that at all, or was that helpful?
I did not actually read the book, but I have, of course, like a lot of people, read a lot of his posts. He does a great job of creating a lot of great content, and I absolutely took a look at a bunch of those, but. Quite honestly, I really leaned hard on the team who had been through it many times before and could advise me well.
Yeah.
And of course, then our second game was the Night Cage, and that thing just exploded. So
that's a game that I got to try out for the first time at TantrumCon.
Mm-hmm.
Did you get to play it?
No, I didn't get to play it. I think I was just too distracted by playing all these games that I haven't been able to play in a long time that I didn't actually check any of the vendors out, and I'm really kind of kicking myself.
I don't know why you didn't. Every time I got up to go, I'm like, come on.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, I know for you that was your first major type convention since COVID.
Since COVID, yeah. So
I'd done a couple before that since COVID, but I know he out of everyone I know had taken the longest to sort of get out there and
trying to take precautions and stuff.
Yeah,
and that makes sense. But I was certainly happy to be able to, meet and greet and also play some awesome games. And Night Cage is definitely one of them. I got to say, I like the artwork and just the general feeling of that game.
Yeah.
I've got it on the shelf back there. You can
I've seen the artwork, and actually I passed by the vendor place enough that it caught my eye every single time.
That's right. And you never stop. Okay. I'm going to stop giving you a hard time. There it is. Yeah. And so in the game, you build, well, not gameplay wise, but you have to build this candle first, like that right there.
Yeah.
And it holds the tiles that you are using to explore this kind of like basement-esque, like dark area. And it's full of monsters. And, so there's a certain number of tiles that are monsters, a certain number of gates, keys, other things like that you need in order to escape. And so you have to find how many gates?
Well, so you need just one gate. Everyone has to assemble on a single gate, but there are only 4 of them in the stack. And of course, anytime that you are more than one space away from something, it fades from existence. So so even if you go back, it's not there anymore.
Oh, wow.
And that also acts as this like timer mechanism for the gameplay, because if you run out of tiles, you're just kind of like hopping blind and have nothing else to do. Like, so in my first play, I pulled 3 monsters back to back, and then the next tile was a gate. I'm like, this is the worst start for what we're trying to do here, because you also need keys.
Right.
So,
but I assume eventually got where you're going.
We got very close to winning.
Oh, really?
Very close. And that's what was to me the mark of a very good co-op replayable type thing, because you need that difficulty,
right? And
you need that like because you don't want it to be so easy that you're going to win every time you play a co-op,
but you also don't want to be so hard that you like lose immediately. And it's
but the fact that it always it came down to like the final 3 turns, because we're like, okay, we got this, we got that, okay, if I can go here and you can go there, and it's like, that's what was really epic about it, is you could finally see all the pieces coming together in a sense, like once you kind of find what you need. And it's like, okay, now how many tiles do we have left to work with, and how can we get there? So
well, and quite right. So the way we balance co-op games, and I think this is fairly consistent across the board for any good co-op. It's like a 40-60% chance, 40% chance of winning against 60% fail odds.
Okay,
which kind of keeps the tension about right. And yes, I think also a good mark of a co-op game, and this is true of the Spill as well, is it goes right down to the wire and can do so from game to game to game to game. So you might have a different situation that is percolating out of control, but you're still like this close, and either you make it or you don't. And
you get that small taste of like success, and you just barely miss it, and you say, we got to set this up again. Let's try it.
Love that suspense.
So I think it's a really well-made game. It obviously is like it works well as a co-op. I enjoyed just kind of the feel of it, the tension that just naturally, it's a candle, but you're actually removing it, and it's kind of like slowly burning down. It's just very clever.
Yeah, cool. And you mentioned the artwork. That is all credit to Chris Chan, who is one of the designers. The design team, they're all creative folks from an advertising agency down in Manhattan. That's where they met. That's how they got all together, and they are amazing to work with. They're all extremely intelligent, very creative, and I just kind of step back in a lot of cases and just let them do what they do, and occasionally steer where I thought there's an opportunity.
Nice.
But man, they are incredible designers, incredible artists. So yeah.
I really think the artwork on it makes it what it is.
Oh yeah,
for sure. Like, it's just immediately recognizable, memorable, and certainly something that makes you want to try it.
Yeah. And so, I think the question for me was, well, it's got this kind of horror theme to it, or existential horror in any case. So I guess my thought or fear was, oh, well, I guess this will be, is this going to end up being kind of devolving into, well, it's appropriate for Halloween times, but otherwise less so, has not been the case. And the sales, I haven't had a title do what this game is doing before.
Wow.
Our first 2 print runs were sold out before they even hit the shore.
Wow.
That's really impressive.
Yep. I ordered the first print run. It went out to backers. I had, an extra, I don't know, like 4,000 of them. And even before I got them in the warehouse, they were already spoken for.
Wow.
So I had to reprint while it was on the water. As that ship was coming in, they were sold out before they got to the shore.
That is incredible.
And the supplier's like, you want how many now?
Exactly. Well, and so my third print run, which I activated in November, was it was the biggest print run I've ever done for any game at once, and it was 12,000 units. So for me, that was significant. For other companies, maybe it's just like, oh, it's a regular day. But for me, it was a big deal.
Yeah.
And so it got to the warehouse last month and a half ago.
Yeah.
3 weeks later, I'm like going into like my inventory from the warehouse, and I'm like, where are all the games?
Where'd it go?
There are only 800 games left. Where did the games go?
Whoa.
And I'm like, I'm on the phone. I'm like trying to figure out what has happened. Where are they? They just arrived.
That's amazing.
So
you're printing money. I mean, that's all it is.
So fourth print run is in production now, but it's
amazing.
It's crazy.
So do you think that there's going to be expansions or other material that you can put into the game?
So
I mean, you have to with that kind of
right. Well, that's the thing. So when the designers were at Gen Con with me last year, and we were watching the craziness as it was happening on the floor. In fact, I even had Barnes and Noble has been a huge supporter of this game, and apparently it went the day they put it out. The week they put it out, it ended up being the #1 best-selling board game for them. And I was told it was doing like code names numbers. And I was like,
wow.
Oh wow,
what? So yeah,
and they have a huge library now. Like
they do.
I've seen it. Yeah, I've been to
the
the
last
library.
time I went in, they had like 7 shelves front and back of really nice games.
Yeah,
I've gotten a few there.
Well, and that's because the buyer is a gamer. And she's a very knowledgeable gamer, and she knows what she likes and what she thinks is going to sell. And in this case, she was delighted that she was right. So yeah, as a result, we definitely are. We're going to try to have a little bit of an additional promo that we're going to have at our booth at Gen Con if everything works out.
Sweet.
And again, if things work out, we may have an announcement around Gen Con about where the Night Cage goes from here. It's
all right.
It's almost not quite ready to talk about, but I'll just tease this. It's not an expansion. This is going to be, all right, you turn your keys, you escape the Night Cage. What new hell do you end up in?
I'm pretty intrigued.
Yep, that is going to be the kind of the idea for how this game moves forward.
Like a campaign type of deal.
So is this? You said that you're gonna announce it around Gen Con. Is that something you're gonna put out on
the internet,
on your channels? Yeah, I want to find out about this. Where can I find out?
Yeah, we may not be able to go to Gen Con.
Yeah. Well, so if in fact we're able to make the announcement, then yes, I'll certainly be putting it through our social as well. smirkanddagger.com or Facebook. I have it, Twitter, all my Smirk and Daggery things. But and hopefully people who are there will also start talking about it a little bit. But
I'm sure
we've been through a couple development meetings because I told the designers, look, there will be a follow-up, and we all agreed that it should be this more iterative, the story continues rather than a just
add on top of what it is.
Exactly. So we'll have a little add on top, as a kind of a small promo thing, but the big news will be like, where does it go from here? Yeah.
That's awesome. Very exciting. Awesome. And maybe also like I'm thinking like a big box, right? Everyone does a big box.
It's going to be a standalone game. So no big box.
Standalone game, but playable with the original.
Playable in sequence, perhaps.
In sequence.
Like, so it's not like you'll still play the Night Cage as the Night Cage, or if you don't want to do that tonight, you can do this new version.
Interesting.
It's just a new game in that world that provides a new puzzle, a new challenge.
Oh.
So, but what I'm thinking though, if you do a Kickstarter for it, I think that you've got to offer some kind of box to be able to put both of them in somehow, so that you have like episode 1, episode 2, like Perseverance did. From Mind Clash Games. I just received that one, and they're like, this is 2 games in 1 box, and I'm like, okay.
As you can tell, he loves the really big one.
Sorry, it gets me excited, but I know not everybody likes big box of stuff, because then you got to put it somewhere. But.
Right.
Anyway, I'm sure you guys are going to do great with it, because that game's fantastic, and I think what you guys described, I think that's going to be a really good fit for the Night Cage.
So I was curious, and you mentioned that you had a team of designers on this. Like, so what exactly goes into, or how many people or voices do you typically have or appreciate having on your team when creating a game? Like, is that something where you have individual roles, or is it like kind of really collaborative? You just have a group of people who are all kind of doing everything?
Well, so first of all, it depends a little bit on the project and who the designer is. So there's only one actual full-time employee at Smirk and Dagger, and it's this guy. So I really do wear all the hats. And my background has, I do have a lot of skills from my past that I bring to that table. I was an art director. So I do graphic design. I was a writer for a marketing agency. So I write technical as well as creative. I was a filmmaker, so I do my own storyboards when I am getting ready for Kickstarter things.
Oh wow!
I have a
videos
pretty
to show on the Kickstarter page.
Yeah,
nice.
So
nice.
I don't do the actual videos. I actually hire out freelance for that. But I am basically directing and scripting all of those. Yeah. So now that said, no man is an island, and I am no exception. There are skills I don't have, and I also really rely on the input of others. So that comes from a lot of sources. So as I mentioned, I do work with Off Duty Ninja. They help me with some marketing, as does Envoy, which is they're a third-party demo team nationwide, and they provide a lot of services to me. On top of that, I've got someone who helps me with social media, and I've got someone I've just added as a freelance salesperson for retail. But of course, the most important in terms of what we're talking about in the design process is twofold. One, I've got a team of very dedicated people who have been helping me out at conventions forever, since I got my start. And honestly, they're friends, they're family, they're my instigator team. And when we're at shows, or sometimes now even on Tabletop Simulator, we will get together and they will give me their input. Is this game worth bringing on? You know what? Why don't we tweak this rule? Or in some cases, they have actually created games. So Behext, which is the game that we just kickstarted, was the brainchild of 3 of my team members.
Cool.
They fell in love with one of my very first games ever, and they thought of a way to modernize it. And so they brought it forward like, hey, we've been thinking about doing a thing. What do you think? And I was like, I love it. So we
like,
worked on it together.
This was my idea. This is great. Of course,
right.
It's
well,
good.
And of course, it's embarrassing because they made it so much better than my original game.
Like, why didn't I think of that?
Well, you just taught them well, right?
Yeah. But and of course, that's kind of the intersection. Most what I do is if I have not designed the game myself, there is a designer or designers who had brought it forward and wanted me to take a look at it and potentially publish it. And when I have done so, I adopt it like it's my own child, and I have as much passion for it as they do. And I am not the size company where, I sign a game and thank you, you'll see it when it's done.
Yeah. Right.
They become partners as much as they want to be a partner in my design. Right. So, they know the game better than anyone, and I hope to know it as well as they do by the time we're putting mechanicals together. But yeah, so I will use them as a resource. I'll kick around ideas with them. I'll say, you know what? I think we are like 85%. Here is an opportunity. There's one thing in this game I think we can be doing better. I don't necessarily have to solve it myself. Why don't you take a look at it and see if you can address that? And if you want my help, great. I'll throw in more ideas. Yeah. But depending on how adaptive they are and how excited they are to be part of that process will determine how much we partner back and forth.
Makes sense. Speaking of Behext, I did get to play with you, and you taught it to me at Tantrum Con with Chris, the charity board gamer.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. The charity board gamer.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't know what he'd prefer to be called, but yeah.
Very nice guy. But no, you taught us with, I think Holly was there too. Yep. So we played Behext, and I think from experience, it plays best at 4, but you can tell me. Yeah, I mean, because you've got these decks of cards there in the middle that you can kind of choose from when you're drawing your cards for your upgrades. But you also have kind of it's like light deck building a little bit, as you have a hand of cards and you play to affect a fireball that gets shot at you.
Yes. You were telling me about that.
I was.
That was okay.
That's Behext.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Because
you're casting a curse at someone, almost like in Harry Potter's room requirement where they cast a curse and they like bounce it back and forth between each other. Yeah. Like that's kind of the idea of the game. And every time you deflect it, you're like changing it, adding something like some new effect.
You can build it up. You can make it stronger, poison, or like spiked or whatever. And then
how long does that typically go?
Until someone has no more.
It's like
options.
hot potato.
Yes. In that way, it's kind of like hot potato. Yeah.
Because it passes to someone and then they have to use something to try to get rid of it.
Right.
Okay, they get rid of it. And then the next person's like, oh, I don't have anything except this, which then sends it back to that person maybe. But then they're like, well, you can't give it back to me because I have this shield.
Boom.
And so it explodes in their face.
Nice.
So it's great.
Yeah.
It's really fun and entertaining.
And that game really was that was my very first game in 2003. It was called Hex Hex, where there was no deck building involved. You got randomly something and you had to deal with what was ever in your hand. It was a little bit more of a party game feel in that way. In fact, at the end of each round, you got to make a rule for the next game. And it might be like, before you play the card, touch your chin. You forgot, discard a card, try again. Like you could make any rules that you wanted. So it got to be kind of a crazy game. And
talk about coming up with your own spells.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Now that game was in constant print until probably 2017. So it had many iterations. I had expansions, it did its job. And I was like, I'm probably thinking about maybe retiring this one at this point. It feels a little dated and, probably let's move on. And my team didn't know I was thinking that. They came forward and they were like, so we were all talking, what would it be like if you made a really weird deck builder out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me more. And it really did. It turned it into a strategy game. Because how you construct your deck is the type of player interactions that you are going to have. You are basically saying, you know what, I'm going with a discard strategy to force cards out of your hands. Mm-hmm. Someone else is I'm going with a direct damage strategy. And you can mix and match.
So Behext has been a really interesting game that I don't normally do just straight card games. I don't know why. I mean, because every time I play them, I usually have a good time.
Sure. Yeah.
But I know one thing I don't like is take that and trick taking. And I think a lot of times, I apologize if that's your jam.
Well, that's what Smirk and Dagger is, right?
That was 14 years of what Smirk and Dagger was.
I understand.
Yeah.
But personally, I don't care for so much of the backstaggery smirking and daggering.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that actually brings up a good point.
But the Hex is not that.
That's interesting.
I don't feel that it is, because even though you are trying to send the other players this curse, that's the whole game. That's not. So I when I come from a point of a view of I don't like take that is when it's an hour-long game and you're building up something and someone can screw you up and then you feel like your whole whatever is destroyed, or you have to start over, or you have to keep doing the same, like Sisyphus rolling a freaking rock up the hill.
So let me interpret this. What you're basically saying is that if the point of the game is to build towards a goal, you don't like if someone can, but if the goal is the backstabbing, then that's a different story.
Yeah, if that's all you do, then I can get behind that.
Yeah, okay.
But the game has to be the right amount of time, and I felt that Behext was in that time frame of it's not too long of an experience of just that.
Yeah. Well, here's what I'll say. I think there in the past have been a couple games that have put backstab mechanics into a game that should not have had any. And there's a difference between a game with backstab mechanics and a backstabbing game.
Yes. Sure.
Because it's a social contract. Everyone knows that's what's coming. That's the point of it. Right. And therefore, cool, we're good. Even Cutthroat Caverns, which again, it runs 90 minutes, but the entire game is really about trying to get the best on other people and doing terrible things. You need to work together just to survive, but you still have to be selfish, and someone's gonna, be in harm's way.
Mm-hmm. So I remember reading about that, actually. So that's something that everyone has to survive, right, in order to finish, but you just have to do slightly better in the end.
Yeah, you have to live and you have to kill the most creatures for the most prestige. So it's whoever lands the final blow gets all the credit. So now people are I'm only going to try to tap it this turn because I want to live until next turn where I know I can kill it. So it's all kinds of ridiculous stuff.
Yeah, but Behext is what, 30 minutes or so to play, maybe less with less players, something like that?
I think it's probably more up to 45, 50. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, even still, it was a very enjoyable game for what it was. And even though it is a take that, I wouldn't consider it I don't know. Like you said, it's that's all you're doing.
Sore about it. Yeah.
I'm not sore about it because that's the whole, it's like playing Magic the Gathering and being upset that someone destroyed your monster. It's well, that's the point.
That's the point. Right.
Right. It's not Magic the Gathering is not a take that game. It's just a straight competitive, brutal game.
All right.
You see?
I
like competition, and that's fine.
Well, of course. Yeah.
But if the competition is very Euro-y, and then all of a sudden you introduce something that's oh, well, now you have to stop and now you got to start over here. I'm well, then that's not
misplaced.
That doesn't make sense.
Right.
I have to give an example of a game that I did not like because of the take that elements was Villainous. Oh. If you've played Villainous, you know that you are kind of engine building. You are having to make certain things work together and cards get played out. But if people start targeting you, you have no hope of winning. And that's not fun.
Yeah.
This isn't the first time you've mentioned Villainous.
Well, it's a good example to me of what I'm talking about.
Well, in that case, that's the problem. There is not so much the backstabbing; it's king making.
That too.
Okay, sure.
I mean, that can happen in any game, I guess.
Yeah.
But in this one, every time someone targets you, it's a big loss.
Yeah.
And overcoming one loss is one thing, but overcoming 3 losses before it comes back to your turn, that's not even like what are you doing?
I can understand that.
It's like you're starting over every 4 turns, and you're like, well, now what do I do? So that's, for me, was like, nah, don't like it. But other games that do it well and do it where it's fun, and how do you capture what makes it fun?
Yeah, I mean, so for me, like what got me started down this whole rabbit hole, I got inspired by Tom Jolly's Whiz War. The original, way back.
That's 80s, I think.
80s, yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, this is a game where it's spell, counterspell. I think even Richard Garfield got inspired by this game, and he's credited Tom as well. But I mean, you get sealed behind a wall, and you're trying to beat it down with your fists, and it's hysterical to do that to somebody. But I mean, you're out of the game for several turns just trying to get out of there.
Oh, wow.
And it's all kinds of ridiculous stuff and all kinds of just screwing each other. But oh my God.
Chaos is cool. Like, if you're getting into a chaotic game,
sure.
I'm down. Like, I get it. Like Robo Rally, also Richard Garfield. I love Robo Rally.
Me too.
And yes, there's take that in Robo Rally because you're getting pushed, but it's fun. Yeah. Like, that's what you're getting into.
And it's not always intentional either. Sometimes you just run into each other and push them off.
That's also what makes it funny is, sometimes you mess up, sometimes they unintentionally did it. And that's what makes it chaotic fun.
Great to play at midnight.
Right, exactly. That's exactly when we play it every single time.
At Tantrum Con, we played it at midnight.
Next time we play,
wasn't it 8 players that we did?
It was, I
feel like we filled it out.
We did.
Invite me next time.
Carly was there, and we've talked about Behext. We've talked about the Spill. Yeah. We also played Shobu at the convention.
Yes,
and I showed Steven this, and he's hooked, and I'm hooked. I can't stop playing this game.
Yeah, I really want to talk about Shobu.
And we've actually already talked about it once or twice on our podcast.
Yes, you have. Yep.
And I mean, that's no coincidence. We love that game.
Yeah, I have a really strong, like, I love the really simplistic but like strategically heavy games
in like depth.
Like Shobu, where on its face looks really simple. Like, obviously, if you're getting started to play, you just have to stick your finger and move a piece around. Like, it's super easy to start, but like there's so much depth there.
Yeah.
That I absolutely love.
To me, it's like it's the next Go. Like it's where Go would go to if it had like a sequel. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Did you?
Well, so
go to?
No.
It's pretty amazing. So what Mano and Jamie really did, the designers, is they pulled out an amazing feat to create a brand new game that feels like an ancient game that stood the test of time.
Mm-hmm.
That's almost impossible to do. Mm-hmm. There have been lots of great abstract games that have come out. I mean, TAC is great, and there's all kinds of like really super great abstract games, but they don't necessarily feel like you discovered them on an archaeological dig, and this one does.
Yeah.
So,
it's true.
And I think it's because it really did. The pieces are simple enough, and I think from art direction sensibility, yes. I mean, we could have made plastic bits on
miniatures,
but it would have ruined it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It would have been the exact same game, but a complete different experience. So everything about it just echoes like this experience from the past, and that's what I absolutely love about it. But the other thing is it's got an amazing on-ramp. So it starts out about as simple as checkers. Like, everyone's like, oh, la, 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 it's simple. And then about halfway through the game, just as everyone's comfortable, then it turns into 3-dimensional chess. And you're like,
and it gets real.
Wait a minute. Oh, I have to rebalance my board to figure out how to.
Absolutely right.
Oh,
there's that turn where you see it, and people, you see it in their face. They're like, oh, there's a lot to this.
Yeah.
all of a sudden, I don't know what's going on.
Yeah. And honest to God, so the amazing story about this is, so I met the designers when I was up in Toronto. There was a board game design show up there, Pro2TO. And that's, by the way, I signed in that show both the Spill and Shobu. So
good call there.
Yeah, awesome.
So great show. But when I first encountered it, I was starting to talk to the designers, and they said, "Well, this is actually the first time we brought it back out." It's like, "What do you mean back out?" I was like, "Well, when we first designed it, like it seemed like it was too good. Like we thought maybe something was wrong. Maybe we were just like fooling ourselves. Like we couldn't find any problems with it. We kept on trying to break the math and everything. Like so we got scared and we shelved it for 2 years." I'm like, "You what?" Yeah. So this is the first time we was like, maybe we should check it out again. And so they brought it to the show, and I just instantly fell in love with it. Now at that time, I had really just started my rebranding. Because like I said, I did for 14 years, I did nothing but Take That games. And so once I went full time, I said, well, I actually have to have a broader shoulders. I've got to appeal to more people, not serve such a niche. So I created Smirk and Laughter to be the answer to that, because I had done such a good job of planting my flag and telling people what I was, that when I first tried to stretch that boundary, I went to the Gamma trade show where retailers and distributors all gather with publishers to see the new stuff. And I had a game at that time called Sutaku, which was a push your luck dice game. It was kind of a pub style game where you could really screw yourself if you went too far. And I was like, well, that's adjacent. Every retailer stopped at my booth and they're like, whoa, wait a second. Where's the dagger in this Smirk and Dagger game? And I'm like, oh, I really painted myself into a corner. So I knew back in 2014, I was going to have to like do something like this to just like let people know there's something else. We're going to be producing something else now also. Yeah. Well, at this time, I had only done 2 different titles in the Smirk and Laughter line, and none of them, my vision for what the sub-brand was going to be did not include a game like this. An abstract that I was like, and I struggled for 2 days at the show, like, why can't I have a pretty thing? I want a pretty thing. Yeah. And I talked myself into it. It's like, you know what? I don't care. I'm going to do it. I'll change the brand later.
I think that was a brilliant decision.
Smart move, yeah.
And we did notice, because it says Smirk and Laughter on it, and I was like, "Why do you say it's Smirk and Dagger? What's going on here?"
Yeah, I had to look it up, and I thought I was just like I'd misread it or something for quite a while, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was a sub brand that I felt the need to make at the time, and now when I'm at conventions, I'm finally getting to the point where fans and retailers are no longer giving me like a hairy eyeball because I have a cooperative game. Because when I first came out with the first cooperative, they're like, a cooperative game? Yeah. Smirk and what?
Right.
I don't understand. And so finally, I think people are trained. I'm probably going to kind of like condense back down to a single branding in a year or 2. You'll notice like,
how about Smirk and Swagger?
Yes. Well, so you'll notice like I'm starting to double brand.
Yeah.
Yes, I saw it on your website too.
Yeah. So that way I'll ease people, slowly into consolidating back to one brand.
I have to say, on your website, you have like the 2 different links to Smirk and Dagger and Smirk and Laughter. I love how your profile pictures are like, they fit the theme on both of them.
Yeah. My Wolverine claws on the wall.
Yeah. That was great.
Yeah. Feel free to use Smirk and Swagger, man. That's
for your perfume line, or I guess cologne.
For those dance games.
That's great.
Man, so being a small publisher, what's it been like since COVID? What's it been like before? And kind of where do you see growth for smaller publishers like Smirk and Dagger, like Smirk and Laughter? How do you see the growth in the industry?
that is a huge question to unpack. I mean, how deep you want to go?
Well, how much time you got?
Yeah.
I got some time, but so to answer the first question, and I kind of teased it a little while ago, like, you know, with the advent of Kickstarter, the barrier has been lowered significantly. There are a lot more people who, you know, can jump into the industry, you know, get their vision made and find that maybe they're even going to be a real publisher at some point.
You know, not to interrupt, but Steven and I, in the past couple podcast episodes,
We're making a game.
we're making a game.
Right.
I mean, eventually we'll have to figure out how to make it.
Yeah, so if you can weave in some tips about how to do well on Kickstarter. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Well, so what I first would recommend to most people is that unless you really want to open a small business, you should still consider pitching your game to another publisher and getting it licensed. That's still the best way to get your game out there potentially, but not completely transform your every waking hour. And that's what it is to actually go and do this. So,
I mean, you're running a business. I mean, you're talking travel time and like prep and marketing and production and suppliers and costs and
yeah, and honestly,
just goes on.
it is possible, and this is kind of what I tell designers who are considering this. Is like, it's possible for you to fund your dream, get your game out to the people who believe in it, and do that without changing your life completely. You can do that, but the moment your brain clicks over, you're like, I kind of want to put this on a shelf somewhere. You want to put it in a store. At that point, that's where your life transitions to a small business owner and comes with every headache that a small business has. And it's a 3 to 5 year just to kind of break even. Like there's a lot of stuff that happens once you open a business. And if you're not ready for that, if that's not what you want to do with every waking hour, then it's not for you. But the truth is that the barrier
sure, sounds fun.
Well,
I got a job, man. I can't.
Well, and so did I, right? So for 14 years, I did this concurrent with a very demanding job in marketing. And you know, I worked with Dannon and Jameson and all kinds of things, bringing their sales plans to life.
Well, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, but I did this company from 9 to midnight every night. Every night.
Yeah.
And on weekends.
Like my YouTube channel.
Yeah.
That's how I'd make it work.
Yeah. And I did one game a year, and it was a hobby business at that time. You know, I made enough that I could keep on funding new games, but I didn't have to live on it. That was an important distinction. So when I finally made the transition, that's when I really had to really start thinking about not just titles that I loved, but titles that I thought were going to actually perform and be marketable. So, and that is the difference, right? So, but the point is that many people have found success and open companies more than ever. You know, they didn't have to put their house on second mortgage to print their first game like I did.
Oh, wow.
Which I do not recommend.
That sounds really scary.
It was, but that was the only way that I could get my first game produced. I went to Gen Con with a prototype. At that time, you know, there was no card crafter, you know, or other, you know, kind of thing. I went to a local Kinko's or Staples like now, and I printed on parchment paper, hand cut, like
with those things.
Yep.
Oh, the big cutters. Yeah.
Yep. Big cutters. It went into a clear deck box. And you had to fold and make your own tokens. Like, that
is so punk rock, man.
Right. So I made 100 copies of my first game, Hex Hex, and I brought it to the first Gen Con when they actually went to Indy for the first time. I did not have a booth. I was a single card table at a retailer's booth that invited me to like show my game off.
That's awesome.
And I sold. I put like $12 on it. Now, again, this was back in the day. So I was like, you know, I don't know, will I sell any? But I had this was the size of my sign was a piece of paper on a card table. That's the only way people were ever going to know I was there, if they did. So
man,
I sold about 72 of those games.
that's amazing.
Awesome.
And I went home and I was like, I might have something here. So we had the conversation. Well, what is it going to take to do? And so we made the decision together. My wife and I was like, all right, well, we'll take out the loan. We'll,
smart man to ask the wife.
Oh,
well,
yep.
If you're putting a second mortgage on your house, that's
yeah.
So.
But of course, none of us knew at that time that it would completely take over my life, which it most certainly did.
So she's still happy with that decision?
Depends on the day.
Cool.
But yeah, no, I mean, and it's done well for us. We've had successes. We've had a couple failures, but we've been small and nimble, and we've been able to keep our head above water and keep making games that we love. And that's the thing. But of course, so that's the thing. Now you got 5,000 games. You got a lot more people jumping into the industry than ever. And so what is different about that? Well, the first thing is in 2019, there was a absolute sea change in distribution. It's not talked about a lot. In fact, I had to actually do digging to find out what was going on. All of a sudden, I went from being fully distributed almost to not being distributed at all.
Wow.
How did this happen? Well, it happened because the distributors brought in some accountants to take a look at the business model. And they all seemed to kind of get the same idea at the same time. And they said, guys, you can't actually buy this deep on this many games and be sustainable. It's not. You can't do it. So you actually need to change your structure so that you're buying whatever the retailers pre-order plus 10, 15%. That is something that, will work out much better for you and you won't be as exposed. It makes great sense on paper. And quite honestly, it's a great business model that distributors have been successful with. But the reality is that this has caused a major problem. Retailers tend not to pre-order games unless they don't think they're going to be able to get them otherwise, because the system is not set up to be kind to them making pre-orders. Right. They might get things months after they wanted them, and then maybe the game is dead. There's all kinds of reasons, and that they still have to buy them. So there's a lot of things that even I don't even understand the full picture of, but certainly retailers have told me, we have to do it when we have to do it, but otherwise. So I didn't get any pre-orders that year because people weren't struggling to get my games. When they came out, retailers would order them, and they know they could. Well, The Menace Among Us came out in fall of 2019, and I'd already seen sales drop off significantly. I couldn't figure out what was going on. It's oh, well, maybe, I had a bad title. It wasn't working out. Okay, that happens. Menace Among Us, I had a lot. It was our tentpole product. And I was like, what is going on? And I'm getting retailers. Where's the game? I'm like, well, it should be out there. And I started calling around, and retailers like, well, the distributors don't have it. It just launched. So I started calling distributors, and they're like, oh yeah, well, there were no pre-orders, so we brought on 7 copies.
Oh boy,
you sold out though.
I had a warehouse. I had a warehouse full of games that retailers wanted, and I couldn't get them.
They didn't actually. Oh my gosh.
So
that's scary.
The problem was that distributors didn't talk to the industry about what changes they were making, and retailers didn't want the responsibility of what are you going to stock. So all of a sudden I was basically out of stock everywhere.
There was a standstill.
Yeah.
Wow.
Now this hit a lot of small and mid-tier publishers. It also, even the large publishers saw a dip, but of course their dip was, easy to navigate. But going from fully distributed to zero, small and mid, we got hit hard.
Right.
Now, I started calling. I was looking for solutions. I was like, what is going on and how can I correct it? Now, and Alliance was one of the first ones. Oh, we'll tell you what. I mean, I said, well, can I floor with you? Now, flooring is like just consigning games. Like, don't pay for them up front, no risk to you, and it's already a risk to me. So I just want to have access to them. Yeah. And they like, no problem. And in a month, we were all set up. That hasn't really been the case with other distributors, but but we're still working on that. So it's right now really hard, and I think even harder as we move forward to get in distribution, to get from the point where you're like, I have Kickstarted a game to I get it on a shelf. That's getting harder to do. It has also, I think, made the entire industry look really, really hard at the number of products they're introducing per year and which products they're actually going to move forward with. It has certainly changed my view of like, what do I'm really thinking about what is going to break through the clutter. Is this game going to sit head and shoulders above whatever else I think might be coming out around that time? Yeah. And honestly, retailers have only so much money they can spend, and if your game launches during a Magic release, guess what? You did not get picked up that month. So yeah, so it's a very interesting industry.
That's a tough business. I mean, you're because game design itself is however many years, and then once you get the game made, then you're talking about the lead time of production. Mm-hmm. And in that time, you're also marketing it,
sure,
and trying to get the retailers on board. And all of a sudden, if, like you said, you could just get screwed where, it might come out at the wrong time against some other competition. And what do you do?
Yeah. Well, so what you do is, I think now Kickstarter or Game Founder, other crowdfunding platforms are essentially much more important to all publishers of all sizes at this time. One, it is a great proof that the game is going to be successful, that it has a market. It gets people aware of the game much earlier in the process. So it's not like the game comes out and then we have to discover it. We've been waiting for it. All of these things are probably, good, but it means that the platforms aren't going away and have become a lot more important. And those games that do well, certainly they'll find room on a retail shelf. And then there are some games that they're not made for Kickstarter. For example, this year I've got one which is a great follow-on product to Shobu called Boop. And Boop is an adorable game, but it's not made for Kickstarter. It's a game I'm going to go right to retail with, and the power of this game is going to sell it off the shelf. And I know that we've got retailers who of course stock our games and well, at the Gamma Trade Show, this was like one of the most buzzy titles out there. And I was walking around with the box, right?
Nice.
I love it.
And
it's cute.
It's adorable. And people are like, what is that? And then I was like, oh, well, so it's a game where you got cats jumping on a bed and bouncing other cats off of it. And they're like, oh no, is that an actual quilted game board? It's like, yeah, it's fabric. And they're like, shut up, take my money.
Of course.
Yeah. So,
right? And that is a 2-player only.
Yeah, 2-player only. It really is an abstract strategy game.
It's like except trampoline cats.
Yes, but it's got this adorable thematic to it. So it kind of left the abstract world because now I can imagine cats going on and booping each other off. But
at its heart, it's abstract.
It is. And quite honestly, it is, I kind of think of it as like Shobu 2. And originally when it was presented to me by Scott Brady, he did Hues and Cues, by the way. So,
so he designed Boop as well?
He did, yes.
Oh.
So he pitched to me originally back during the mid-COVID as a game called Gekutai. And it had a very Japanese theme. It was white and black stones on a board. It was set up to be like a natural, right in. But I felt like it wasn't going to be necessarily the same or better visibility on the table. It felt a little bit too expected. And at that time, the gameplay, he still had just a little bit of work to do to make the it ended too quickly without kind of a nice flow to the game.
Sure.
And he found a way to graduate pieces to make the game a lot more interesting. And so when he came back and showed me the new version of the rules, he also said, plus, what do you think about this theme? And like, that I can sell. So
So where is that available on your website? Because I am absolutely interested and would like to know how I can get it and play with my wife.
The answer is, this is a reaction I've gotten a lot, but it is due out Gen Con or September.
Okay.
Right now, it's currently on press getting prototyped.
Okay.
So if shipping is kind and everything, hopefully we'll have it for Gen Con. Yeah.
All right. I'll be not at Gen Con, I won't, but I'll be there to get it whenever it's available. Yep.
Okay.
Well, certainly something that we could promote on the channel beforehand, and or Steve and I have just started as of today a Meeple Mentor Plays series, which we're going to very likely continue. So the first episode, which is today, we played with 5 of our friends for a 7-player game of The Thing.
Yeah.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that's a fun one.
And, you know, that one just came out, the big one from Pendragon Game Studios, and it plays 1 to 8. And we said, let's get as many people as we can and record this with as many cameras as we can.
That's great.
See what happens. And so far, so good. I mean,
it was a lot of fun. Yeah.
It was a lot of fun doing it. I think, you know, it turned out well. You know, audio turned out well, video turned out well. I did some editing to kind of cut between everything. So I think it's a very like watchable like movie, because I mean you're talking about 2.5 hours to play it.
Oh, okay.
You know what I mean? Like I didn't take out very much.
It's not a clip show.
No,
Gotcha.
not even highlights. It's like this, let's play together and you can watch what happened, you know. Maybe not all the games have to be that long. Maybe not all the games have to be 7-player epic type of experiences. But it seemed like a very good one to start the whole thing off. But as I'm looking at other ways to incorporate different types of games on the channel, because I think mostly for what the Meeple Mentor channel is tutorials and more heavy games, right?
Yeah.
Medium to heavy games. But there's still a lot of great games that I like that I'm trying to find a way to bring it onto the channel other than an unboxing.
Right.
Sure. Yeah.
And I don't do reviews. I kind of leave that to people who have more time to do reviews.
Yeah.
Plus, as a newer content creator, nobody cares what you think anyway, right? At least that's how I felt.
I don't know if that's necessarily true. But I think, I think everyone ends up specializing and creating content that is kind of like true to them and what they're about and what their interests are. Yeah. And some people naturally are going to go to review and do a really great job of it right out of the gate. That's and fair. Some people are like, they're more personalities and like they're showcasing, like they're making whatever they're doing fun because of who they are.
That'd be Steven.
At least that's the only appeal I have so far on this channel.
You've got the personality.
Oh, thanks. Oh, I'm blushing.
But no, the let's play, if you will, is a nice way to get some of these games that we want to get played, that we want to showcase somehow more than just because I couldn't dedicate a whole like tutorial on something like Boop, but. I mean,
but I really want to play it.
We want to play it, and we would certainly want to talk about it. And how do we do that? Perhaps this is a good fit for that sort of. Because again, the thing was a big ordeal. I mean, for recording, we might have to look at some other, 4-player or less type experience games. But anyway, that I just threw that out there as I think that would be something that at least the direction of the channel is going. Cool. And I don't know. It's exciting.
Well, I mean, it's
so what I'll say is it's the same kind of thing I was thinking about. We started using Dized. Are you guys familiar with Dized? Mm-hmm. So Dized is this interactive tutorial where you play along as you learn. So you don't have to like kind of read the rules beforehand, and you're not like watching a video before you play. You set up the app and it takes you through each step during play.
It's like a very interactive tutorial.
Cool. And it even has like an interactive rule book. So if you're like in the middle of play and you already know the game, you're like, oh, how do wax eaters work? Type in wax eater and all rules pertaining to them pop up. So it's pretty neat. In any case, I was like, well, should I even do an app, interactive tutorial for Shobu and Boop? I don't know. They're super. I mean, I can fit the rules on a napkin basically.
Yeah.
So, but you know what? Some people that they just like to like learn games in different ways. So I've gone ahead and done that.
Nice.
So I think by the same token, yeah, you could teach the game in Boop literally in 5 minutes, but then you segue right into a tournament of like a 3-game slugfest trying to like figure out how you're going to get it done, because the beauty of Boop is that you are repelling pieces. Every time you place one on the board, it pushes all pieces next to it away, and you're trying to line up pieces. So it's like herding cats, which of course is the fun. So
Makes sense.
Is that the tagline?
It is.
So if we do a playthrough of something like Boop, we would definitely be able to, because it's like a 5-minute teach.
Oh yeah.
We could do the teach right prior to the playthrough, like, because the thing, of course, I did not take the time to teach it before we played on camera.
Yeah,
we were worried about our batteries lasting that long on the cameras.
We were really running out of camera battery. But something like Boop, something like even Night Cage, like we can teach right before playing it on camera, and it's not going to be that much longer of a video.
Yeah.
So I think that would be another great way for those kinds of games to get a lot more coverage. Like you said, I mean, teach it and then play it.
Yeah.
Not to butt in here, but that's all really cool. So do you have anything like, I know the Night Cage mystery game thing is coming up. Do you have any other things that you're excited about that are coming down the pipes?
Ooh, scooping, huh?
Trying to. I've already got one that I'm really excited about, or two actually, if we're talking about Boop too. But
Heck yeah, we're talking about Boop.
So you know what? I will give you some scoopage here.
You heard it here first on the Mentor Minutes podcast.
Yep. We have been going back and forth trying to figure out like what our next product in the shoot is actually going to be, and I think we've made that decision now. The next one that we're going to kickstart, probably out in the early fall, is going to be another cooperative game for us called Tesseract.
I like it already.
I like the name of it.
It is a dice manipulation game. So you have a cube of 64 dice, the Tesseract, which is an alien artifact that started about the size of a city block, and now you can fit in your hand.
I like it.
And you now have the course of the game, this next hour, to try to prevent it from creating a rip in time space and destroying us. So you are trying to isolate the cubes off of the Tesseract and contain them in a matrix. And you need one of 4 colors in 6 different numeric values to fill out that grid. And you are manipulating them. You are adjusting them up 1 value, down 1 value, inverting them upside down. Like, there are lots of different skills that the different researchers have. And this is a game that you absolutely have to work together. Like, there's a natural tendency in many cooperative games to like kind of focus on what you're doing, your piece of the mission. And this is a game where your best move may be to sacrifice a portion of your move to help someone else do their next turn. And that's based on their skills or the situation, or lots of different things. So I find it really interesting as a co-op game because it's such a strong component. But in any case, you're either going to succeed and fill out that matrix, or the Tesseract will lose all of its cubes, and then that's game over. Or as at the end of everyone's turn, 1 cube comes off and is primed. And if there are ever 3 or more of a primed value in that area, it causes a breach, and 7 breaches is game over. So you're also managing the primed area and trying to like deal with those values to click them down. So,
nice. So you can actually still affect those.
You can, yes.
Okay.
It's a really, really interesting puzzle of a game that has a lot of like, you can like lots of things you can tweak for difficulty as well on that. So that's coming down the pipe.
There's an actual cube involved with dice in it, so it's like a very physical manipulation component type thing as well, right?
Well, so it's there's a sleeve that you pour all 64 dice into.
Yeah.
And then you lift the sleeve off, and then it's a cube of dice.
Oh.
And then you are removing the cubes off of there.
So is it like Jenga, where if you remove the wrong die, like it'll just collapse on you?
No, no, because you can only remove cubes that have 3 exposed sides. So it kind of like collapses in.
Okay. That sounds really cool.
It sounds like you're keeping up the suspense from Night Cage.
Yeah. It's more of a sci-fi kind of feel to it, but I think it's a fascinating game. Now, very different to that game. This was a game that we were considering doing first, but we actually had to postpone it. Imagine Mario Kart and Atari Tank Battle coming together and having a baby. That is kind of what this thing is. Ooh. But we were like, Ukraine, I don't know we can do a tank game now. That's kind of like tone deaf. So we're putting that on hold for now until the world calms down a little bit. But it's ridiculous. Like they're animal tank captains, and you're crushing buildings and you're attacking other players, and it's all like it almost moves a little bit like Wings of War or X-Wing. You're placing your cards, your hand of cards are movement cards, and you place those in front of your tank and move the tank accordingly.
Right, following the paths on them.
Yeah. Cool. So you're closing the distance and attacking each other, and it's a lot of fun. So
that's pretty cool.
That sounds really exciting.
It sounds nice.
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing some updating or some really cool scoops.
On,
some
you bet.
Upcoming games.
I'll be there in the fall. I can't wait.
Yeah.
So it's kind of been a crazy thing. COVID was not unkind to us. I was terrified at the beginning because everything shut down. Distributors, retailers, everybody was closed, and I was like, well, this is not going to be sustainable. I still have to eat. And
that's the year I started the channel, which I mean, thankfully it's not, I can do it from home and everything. But.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and that's the thing. So a lot of the things that I needed to do, I could do from home. And then things like Tabletop Simulator were around, which people always ask me, well, are you ever going to put your games on there? And I was like, why would I? And now all of a sudden, I can't tell you how important it is as a way to like test games at the very least. And now instead of waiting for a convention, it can be Thursday night. I call some people up. Hey man, can you come and test a game tonight? And
you can play test anytime you want.
Yeah,
there you go. It's great. So, so I think, and things like that, I think aren't going to go away. Some of the impacts that COVID has had. I think there's going to be a continued reliance on crowdfunding. I think there's going to be a lot more digital gaming happening. Either because sometimes you're just alone, and I know I played a lot of Star Realms and Ascension on my phone, like a lot of people do, and so that's going to continue to be a way that people board game. The digital aspect is going to be important, and I think publishers are going to be much more choiceful in the games that they are producing.
Sure. With the amount that's still coming out. And the competition's huge.
Yeah, and I think it was ballooning so hard. I think a little bit of pullback was going to be natural course correction in any case. And this just created a reason why you could. I mean, honestly, there's sometimes I was thinking, I don't know if I can reprint a game right now because it's so expensive to ship the games. You know, when shipping is half of your production cost, that's not normal.
No.
And unless that game is going to fly off the shelves, you can't afford to do it.
That makes sense. A lot of insights in there and lots to think about. I think we're going to probably end up wrapping up the episode here. Steven's got a bedtime, I think.
I got a job.
So, that's cool. I'm going to go check out Strange New Worlds. Ooh, I can't wait.
Oh, nice. So real quick, do you have any other cons you're going to in the near future that you're going to show off these games at?
Yeah, so I'm going to be at Geekway next week, Geekway to the West in St. Louis. We're going to be at Unpub in Baltimore the week after that. And then I've got an ACD trade show back-to-back, all three. Then we take 10 days before we go to Origins. So
nice.
Yeah.
I'm going to the Southern Fried Gaming Expo.
That's right.
Oh, yeah.
It's in Atlanta.
Yeah. So that's our next big one. There is one in Kernersville, the end of this
North Carolina. Kernersville,
North Carolina. That's a kind of like a 2-3 day, very small convention capped at like 100 people, but close enough and easy for us to get to. So that I mean,
great.
It's like might as well. So that's our plan.
Cool. Well, hey, thank you so much for having me. I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was great.
Thank you for joining us. And you've been a delight to talk to. And I'm looking forward to all of the games that we've talked about. They're all really great. And the new ones too. I can't wait to see once we have something to look at there.
You got it.
But I appreciate it. And so for this episode of the Mentor Minutes podcast, I've been Jared.
And I'm Steven.
We'll see y'all next time.
Bye, everybody.